Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. There is a reason why I'm here, because tonight there is a concert of Trio Abstract with two electric guys, with an electric guitar man from Leipzig, Mauricio Galliano, and some fader guy, yeah, in Stadtgarten with I think with two quite interesting pieces of one quite interesting or very interesting piece of a colleague of mine and a piece of mine. Maybe you know the sad songs. This project I did with Nickel in Donaueschingen and somewhere, I don't know. And they are doing a very good job, and of course it's a different thing hearing it live, because I'm using also transducers in the space, just a very simple version to go into the space with a filter, and we will try. Maybe you know Stadtgarten, it's not too big, and we will see how it is. So you're all, of course, invited. There might be, and if you tell me, there might be some free tickets as well left from the ensemble, and just tell me, because I will maybe I do put it either on your name or on my name, and you just drop the tickets if so. Yeah. So that's the reason, and I wrote an email to Michael and said I'm here if something could be, because you know when I travel so far it's easy to work on. Okay, just to introduce myself, I don't have to spell my name for those. It's a very big problem, this German AE, yeah, which is always a big problem for flight tickets, because you never know with which name they reproduce it. It's also a big problem for Spotify, because they conceptualize you as AE, and as A. Yeah, so whatever. So you said something about my background? No, that I should tell a little bit about my background. Yeah, for musicians, and I always say I'm born where Webern was killed, so it's very easy. Sorry? In the Alps. In the Alps, yeah. So in the middle of the Alps, with quite little, let's say, possibilities. Yeah. So I was for quite a long time. I did things, especially in composition, for myself. But I had I started to play the flute, and then I studied flute, and I studied composition in Vienna. Everything. Yeah. I studied flute with something which I saw very late that it might be, or that I think it was quite impressive for me and also important. It was a Vienna Philharmonic flutist, fantastic musician, but absolutely non-intellectual. Yeah? So he was a musician. He knew everything how to play it right without knowing anything from here about the music. Yeah? Maybe he knew what C major and F major is, yeah. But we also worked on Berio, and he made everything absolutely correct without knowing anything about the sequencer, yeah, which was very interesting for me, especially in the later times, because when you get a little free from the notes that you write, maybe this is also important then for the piece here, yeah. Then you understand that something inside the music is not what you write down, but it's a kind of a sense, a sensibility, a logic, which is an instrumental, which is a sound-based logic. Huh? So I studied flute, I studied composition also there with a composer who was very well trained. Aesthetically was not so interesting for me, but this was also good, because he didn't support me in what I did, but he didn't also neglect what I did. So from the aesthetics it was fine, and then I was searching, after this I was searching for the most, how do you say, for the thickest wall to run against in music composition, and there were two options at this time. So these were the late 80s, yeah, of the last century, of course. These were Nono, because Nono at this time was teaching in Berlin, and Lachmann. I wrote a letter to Nono, but he died. It's not the letter, but Nono. And so I wrote a letter to Lachmann, and unfortunately that went well. And this was, of course, for me, Lachmann was in this way great, because I didn't write like Lachmann, and that's what I thought. Yeah, and I had to run against this wall, and it was always stronger than me. Yeah, and that's fantastic. Yeah. You need somebody to rub against, and he was always more clever, and he was always brighter, and he knew always more, yeah, and that was fantastic. So this is what I learned, where when we talk about music and when we talk about composition, where the level is or it should be, and it's not meant that you reach this level. So if I say there is no piece interesting beyond Beethoven's level, yeah, of course we or I will never reach this level, but it's the, you know, the effort is more interesting than what we really gain. This is what I think, because this is also an energy, I suppose, that is in music. And then I started to compose. Now I'm teaching composition and analysis at the Musikhochschule or music universities, because out of any special reason we are universities in Graz with some very nice colleagues, and we have a very nice environment, and it's so, yeah. Unfortunately, we do not have the studio right in our department, because we have this strange diversion that the studio is in one part on the technological university and on one part on the music university, which is a special construction. Maybe you know EEM from Graz and what they are doing there, blah blah blah. Yeah. Okay. So this is the piece that. Yep.
Fängst du jetzt mit dem Talk an?
Zum Beispiel.
Das müssen wir ein bisschen feierlich machen.
Ah, okay.
Video.
Okay.
Vielen Dank für die tolle Selbsteinführung. Sehr detailliert. Vielleicht hättest du da auch schon eine Stunde voll gekriegt.
Ich muss mir eine Uhr hingeben, ja, weil sonst verliere ich die Zeit. Mhm.
5 Minuten damit gelegen.
Ja.
Es wäre super, wenn du einfach anfängst, so wie du es eigentlich auch schon vorhattest, jetzt, dass du nochmal sagst, worüber du sprichst und so, damit das im Video
absolut
anfangen wird.
Mhm. Ja, absolut. Ja.
Geben wir dir jetzt den Startschuss, ne?
Good.
Für den Talk.
Okay. All right. Now maybe I wait a little bit for the 2, 3.
Schnell, es geht gerade los.
Entschuldigung.
Eigentlich müssen wir erst anfangen, wenn Nikolas da ist. Entschuldigung.
11 Uhr 11.
Wow.
Okay, but not on the 11th. Okay. So I will start my talk now, and I thanks a lot again for the invitation, with a piece that I wrote a few years ago for electric guitar. Maybe you, so I hope you all heard the piece. It was played in the video that you also saw from by Jaron Deutsch, fantastic musician. Just the very short story about the piece. Jaron made a course in Darmstadt with electric guitar musicians, and he invited several composers to write short studies, short Etüden, for electric guitar. Yeah? And he also asked me, and I said yes. And so when I'm making a project, I decided, okay, I will write short pieces, but at the end I will put the short pieces together. So there are 4 short pieces, there are 3 intersections, and then it's a 15-minute solo guitar piece. Yeah. As you know, when you write something for a specific instrument like the electric guitar, and especially the guitars, it's I think crucial to be very, very involved into the idiomatics of this instrument, as maybe you know. Especially for guitar, writing an idiomatic piece is either possible for guitar players or for if you go have a let's say have a sight on the instrument from a very idiomatic point of view. As you also know, when you write for the electric guitar, you will not write for a no, I will say it differently. For me, it is always clear that the electric guitar is a polyphonic instrument. So there is electric and there is the guitar. Yeah, this is crucial, what I think, and we learned this not from composers or from players out of the contemporary music, but mainly from musicians out of the advanced or whatever rock and how is it advanced rock music. Yeah, so let's say Jimi Hendrix and all these guys. Yeah, this is the way to work with this instrument was mainly, and I think the electric guitar was mostly conceptualized by this type of music. And you will see then later on why this is also crucial for this piece. And so I took my start with the piece with a very simple thing. If the instrument is a polyphonic instrument, yeah, and if I write not just for the instrument but for a player, and I think since about 50 or 60 years we learned that we cannot divide the players from the instruments. Yeah? We have to also see that the groundings of the players on the instruments are to be seen as musical, let's say, material, or as a starting point for the music. Yeah? So there is a division between the guitar and the electronics. Yeah? And the division is that we have two hands on the guitar and we have two legs on the electronics. So what I did for the poor player, that with all his Gliedmaßen, what is what? Extremities? Yeah, it's interesting that that's the extremes are the extremities. Yeah, so he has to use all his extremities besides, of course, his brain and his musical intelligence. But this is all conceived as musical materials. Just to be clear, what it is done. So this is the left hand. Yeah, and as you see, I use the crosses for the tappings, as we know this from normal guitar playing. So as you see, this is all more or less tapped. Yeah? We have no plugging on the left, or there is no, or very little, wie sagt man das jetzt, Zusammenspiel, wie sagt man das jetzt schnell, left and right hand are seldomly together. Yeah, so this is the grounding point. What does the right hand do? Yeah, the right hand has a bottleneck in the hand and does some clicks as here. So there are strokes on the guitar. Makes glissandos, makes some whips, etc., etc. So the saddle of a normal guitar, yeah, which is here, gets floating. Yeah. So what I do is the same with the left hand, with the frets, with an unfretted work with the right hand. Yeah. What does that mean? And as you see, what I gave here, these are approximated pitches on the low E string. Yeah, where it is. So, and you of course should just use, if you have a Fender, for example, the pickup, which is very close to the saddle, yeah, because otherwise you will not hear anything. Yeah? And so this is the grounding for the guitar playing, that I did make a counterpoint and a polyphony between left and right hand, doing something idiomatic, what they always can do. Yeah. So shifting with a bottleneck here, which you know from styles as blues, etc., as one of the grounding guitar techniques in of this kind of blues. Also then advanced rock styles, etc., etc. The left hand is doing the plugging, not plugging, tapping. Yeah, and you know maybe also where this comes from. Okay, this is one side, and what then appears is a very strange thing of harmonic, because we have pitches here, and of course we have pitches here, and of course you see a little bit that I sometimes on a different page, I will show it to you later, give more or less pitches exactly also on the right hand. Yeah, and what you hear is a synthesis between what happens here and what happens here. Yeah, so you will never hear what is written here, or seldomly written what is here. Yeah, this is the counterpoint between left and right hand. Then we have for each study specific setup for the two pedals. Yeah, there is one pedal with a in this way with a filter, with a quite extreme filter with a wah-wah, and there is a second pedal with a ring modulation. This second pedal is more or less the grounding sound of the whole piece. Yeah, this is a slide ring modulator, which is about a flat. Yeah. But I do not use the ring modulator as Stockhausen used it as this kind of strange, very strange, let's say, sound source. But I use it as a way of, let's say, mobile distortion. Yeah. So we have not 100% ring modulator in the sound, but just, let's say, 30%, so that it's kind of distorted. And what does the ring modulator then in relation to this? So the ring modulator does something alike what the bottleneck also does. Yeah, produce a higher and a lower note within the sound. Yeah, so this is the way how the right hand and the grounding sound of the left hand are combined together. Yeah, of course the ring modulator is then a kind of let's call it, it's not by chance, yeah, because it's all, as you know, subtones and wie sagt man, some tones and differential tones, yeah, but it's something alike, yeah. And the left hand, the right pedal, the first pedal, is the sound, which is in this way, it's a wah-wah, so it's a kind of a filter, like a specific filter sound, yeah, which is then also something, a different version of what is happening here in the pitch sound, in the pitch right and left hand. And as you see, I'm changing this, so there is another version of working on pitch and sound. Yeah. So the definition in this specific piece, what is pitch and what is sound, is shifting. Yeah, because we have no clear pitch, and the sound sometimes, and as you see maybe later or as you heard maybe, or maybe you have also found it out, that there are really heavy transpositions with whammy pedals, yeah, 2 octaves down, so that the legs also do something in a counterpointing way to what the right and the left hand do. Yeah, so this is the grounding of the whole setup. This poor guy, Jaron, and some others have to sit here and have to make a counterpoint with all their 4 extremities. Yeah, and this then is the synthesis, or the sum of all this is the sound of the piece. Yeah, of course. This is the way how I'm starting, and as maybe you saw later in the piece, there are, and this is what the composition and why these are 4 studies. From this kind of starting point, I go into various extremes that these starting points will give me. Yeah, so there is an extreme of let's say that left and right hand have chords together. Yeah, the one is plucked with, then really plucked with the bottleneck, and the other is hidden. Yeah, and then I open, and so you have here a chord that is with a stroke, then a chord with a tapping, then you open, and then you hear the normal chord, and then you have another stroke again. So this is a kind of where all the harmonic situations are there at one point. We can go this through then later. To the grounding material, maybe you have some, you heard a little bit, or you read a little bit about how I conceive my material. Yeah, as you know, I'm taking my first point that everything that we hear is a trained listening. Yeah, so we are not just hearing, yeah, but we do learn how to hear. And what I do, and when I'm working out my material, is that I put this very simple thought. This is also was not my thought, but I put it upside down. Yeah, so my training and what I'm learned to listen is how I get to my material. And then the next step, and this is why it's I call them studies for portraits. Yeah, I can, for example, just to get a kind of frame of what we can do. Yeah, I put a frame. For example, these were possible states of listening, of perceiving, of being, of possible me's or humans. Yeah, just to get a frame, because otherwise we can go everywhere. Yeah, and that means that when and yeah, okay, again, just one time back to the listening. Listening is also not just an acoustic phenomenon that we get inside, but when we are listening, and this is what I'm calling the understanding in the listening, yeah, we have, and this is just what we do, we map it on all our senses, yeah. This is why we call sound high. No sound is high, yeah. It's our projection into space that a sound is high, yeah. Also, a sound might be rough. No sound is rough, yeah, but we project it into a kind of tactility, or in our perception of tactility, and there is then relation between the physical sensation of being rough or being uh, bright, for example, or being spicy. Yeah, you can go on. Yeah, and this is how we perceive the world. And when I turn it upside down, yeah, or if you turn it upside down, we are all very good in then when I say, okay, can you think of a very spicy and bright sound on the electric guitar? And I think we will all have more or less the same in our ear. Yeah, more or less. Yeah, because we are from different cultures, we have different relations to this instrument, etc., etc. But there is this collective grounding, grounding that we all learned. Of course, all learned. I'm talking about something more or less from my source. Yeah, a Middle European guy who grew up, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So of course I will not say something about somebody who grew up in the jungle in Africa, because this is a totally different knowledge. Yeah. And so I have to go out. I have to start where I am. Yeah. So this is also the kind of portrait, and this is a series also. Now I'm getting more, how to say, psychological with myself and doing self-portraits. Yeah. But so you know where the material comes from. So I can, for example, say that there is a utopian state of mind, with some specific sensations, and these sensations usually then are the topics of my material. Yeah. In other pieces, just to let you know, I wrote 3 string quartets. Each of the string quartets from the material does the same, and they took their starting point from obsessions in art that I have since a long time. There is the Flaying of Marsyas by Tizian. There is the Grunewald crucifixion from the altar in Colmar, and there are the popes of Francis Bacon. Yeah, and what you see here, yeah, for example, when you see Marsyas hanging on the tree and that's his skin gets ripped off, yeah, these are so strong, and these are overgoing sensations, yeah, which are just possible for us, yeah, in art. Yeah. So we can imagine these, and we can also imagine this in art. We will, of course, never want to imagine this in real life. This is for sure. Yeah, and this is something what art. There's a big point what art really can do. Yeah, and this is very interesting, so that we can transgress our boundaries, even in the most cruel way that we ever can think of. This is what I didn't do here, and maybe if I have time, I then also can go in a little deeper into the specific conditions of the material. Maybe you see that there is something which opens, yeah, like when we open our eyes, or something that closes when we close our eyes, yeah, or our mouth, yeah. Then and this is what you see is the whole is the left hand, yeah, the whole opening and closing, opening and closing. This is nothing else. Yeah? It's like, for example, if you see somebody talk, walking in slow motion. Yeah, could be one of the metaphors. And also one thing maybe to say about the metaphors. Maybe you know there is a fantastic book by Johnson and Lakoff, Metaphors That We Live In or By. I'm not sure how the title is, where they say that we do not need metaphors to perceive our world, but we build our world by metaphors. Yeah? And so just to be also, excuse me. Good morning, my dear. Oh, come on, sorry. Just again to be clear about this. Yeah? These ways, as you see it here, are of course very ways of moving, yeah, and which our hand does. It's some kind of maybe what you can perceive as something as a transformation of what a hand might do on the skin. Yeah, this is quite smooth, and then it gets a little rougher. Yeah, and then later on it gets even rougher, etc., etc. Something that I maybe forgot before was that I'm also giving the signs of how many and which strings are in this case affected by the bottleneck, so that there is also the way that there are strings with the bottleneck that are not affected, and there is then a really glissando and normal pitches polyphony. Yeah. Okay. The first. Okay, let's go a little bit through. Then, if you see those situations, yeah, these situations, these repeated situations, are often. I put them often. This is on a step later in the compositional process when I put them to make some point of the material clear. Yeah, to clarify something by repeating it a little bit, so that the ear, yeah, understands what is doing what is done here with the kind of with this kind of bending, yeah, and a second bending on the right hand. These are always things that I think that are useful and necessary to understand things better. Also, that we understand here this kind of unison, yeah, which of course is then here not a unison, because the bottleneck will not produce, will not be exactly on the same position, yeah? And so the unison is at the same time also not a unison, yeah? And this is, and you know, our ear is very lazy and träge. Was ist träge? Lazy, is it lazy? Lazy, yeah? Träge. Träge is such a good word in German because it's sounding like träge, slow, and you know, whoa, it takes us a long time to understand. Yeah. Okay. Maybe some points to that I want to point out. Again, where? Yeah. No. Sorry. Maybe it's quite good. To the pitches. Yeah. As you know, the right hand is absolutely a chromatic instrument. That's how it is. Yeah, I'm using a normal electric guitar, not a quarter-tone or anything else. Yeah? So, and when I was talking before that the electric guitar was mainly built as an instrument not by contemporary music composers, but by the musicians out of the rock and jazz genre, of course, but rock and jazz and blues genre. Yeah? It was clear for me, and maybe this is also, maybe we are the first or second generation of composers who are not necessarily just trained by Bach and Beethoven and Debussy, but we also, maybe there are also other generations. For example, as you know, Matthias Spalinger, he was a jazz improviser when he was young. Yeah, but I think it's one thing that I was not only trained by the classical music, but also, of course, by the kind of rock, and I did never hear pop, but jazz, yeah, and blues stuff that I got to know quite early, yeah, by having an older brother who said it was cool, yeah, and I, you know, and then it was even more cool for me. Yeah, and this point that the electric guitar is a jazz and rock instrument made me also then to the point my whole let's say harmonic decisions of the right hand are based on very easygoing scales, chords, just derived from jazz and blues. So when you see there are some chromatics, of course, but if you go into some of these scales, and then you will see that they are derived from the various blues scales, and that we know, and all the scales that also rock musicians use for improvisation on a various harmonic field, as well as the chords, are derived from this type of chords. So we have major chords, we have minor chords, we have seventh, we have diminished seventh, we have ninth, we have but this is all, and I do not use the very complicated ones. So this is somehow my reference to the to where the electric guitar comes from, and secondly, it is of course also my transformation of all these kinds of harmonic decisions that are taken from a different musical culture. First, the first transformation is of course that the chords do not appear in an order of tonality or in an order where it might have been appeared in any kind of other style. So there are some references inside, and I have to admit that I will not be able to show you the references that I use. For example, some types of chords that are derived from a jazz or a rock standard. So there is a major chord, there is a diminished fifth, and there is then a minor with a seventh. But I put them on different groundings, so grounding notes. This is just a way for me of making decisions. This is one way, so it's kind of a transformed quotation. Secondly, I put those chords and I also conceptualize these chords as qualities. So you have qualities of very understandable chords. You have or very, let's say, bright chords. A major chord has always something bright, or chords that are a little damped, so where I get in the kind of qualities which might be personal, but at the same time as they're subjective or personal, we know that I would claim that every one of us hears a major chord more bright than a minor chord, and with a diminished seventh, it's or a diminished fifth, it's a different color of these chords as well. And this is how I'm making the whole harmonic stuff of this piece, which has two, for me, which gave me two quite nice things. The one is that I have a control over the whole harmonic area, and also some kind of it somehow makes sense for me, so that the instrument is not speaking with a language that is, let's say, I wouldn't say not appropriate to the instrument, but it speaks its proper language, but I transform this proper language. Second is, and this is also crucial, that everything that is written here is kind of so these are all fingerings. I could also have done this in a tabulatura, in a tabulatur writing. But for a normal musician, as Jaron Deutsch is, well, he made his rock and jazz stuff, of course, but he is used and he's trained to also to read pitches. And of course, if I don't write the pitches, then at least for me, it really I'm lost. Maybe you have ever seen the Rosenkranz sonaten from Heinrich Ignaz Franz Bieber. Do you know these violin sonatas? Fantastic, And the most strange scordaturas, all written in tabulatur. There are scordaturas where he changes the first and the to the third and the second to the fourth string. So when he makes arpeggios, you don't hear da 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 dee dee da da da, but you hear ya dee da dee dee da dee do do dee do dee dee do. That's fantastic, and you read, and when you read it, you have no idea what's this. Yeah? And so that was my decision. But the left hand, thus, is very guitar-like. Yeah? I'm happy that Jaron is not here, because he would smile like this and say, yes, yes, you think it's guitar-like. Yeah. So, but as it's here, and as you maybe heard it, he plays really everything what is standing here, or what I've written. Yeah. So this to the harmonic situation. Yeah. Here, maybe just to point out what is happening here. Here you find a situation, a first small situation. There will then be longer situation where the right hand takes over, let's say, the major part. Yeah, and it's a little bit like that. Every single aspect of this strange setup is at some point in the foreground and in the background. So counterpoint is not something that everything is at the same time at the foreground, but it's also I'm playing with foreground and background. Yeah, of course you have a different kind of material here. This bong, 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 bing. This kind of slight taps. Yeah, and then. You see a kind of rotation and winding here. A second material, or a second of the first step, what you have here, we have quite massive chords, yeah, and here an opening with the accent, yeah, so that we have a chord, and this is the sixth, yeah, means some kind of a sixth fret from the 24th ongoing. Yeah. So what I do is I have from the 24th, which is this, if it has a 24th or not. Yeah, I'm taking 12 frets to here and another 7 frets to the B. Yeah, but approximate, of course. Yeah, and if he gets there to the 7th fret, we have the same pitches, so it's a pitch coordination. Yeah, and then we hear here a chord, then a transformation of this chord, and at the moment when he opens, or the player opens, we have this, and this is a this chord is a D G C. Yeah, you can read it. Yeah, so that's a quite nasty jazz chord. Yeah, then followed by a quite normal ninth chord, and then we have a very normal minor chord, and this is something, let's say, complex, less complex, even less complex, and then we have the major chords. So that we have kind of progression of decreasing the complexity of chords, of these chords, and they are always opened. Yeah. So this is the first situation where I make it clear that there is a pitch in the right hand, there's a pitch on the left hand, and they are confronted to each other. So it's not always this kind of merging the two hands, but also to have the situation that each hand is then also has its own worth. Yeah, and this is all. This is due to my thinking that if I'm going for qualities in composition, each quality at some point must reach a situation where it might stand for itself. Yeah, so it's related to the others, but it also needs to be just what it is. Yeah, of course. Then, because when I say what it is clear that then a major, a minor chord, they are not what they are, but they are full with all the remembrances, with all the associations that might come up with these chords. Yeah. So this is also something where maybe where we can think about that, where my strong love to what I call banality, or the too well known. Yeah, because usually what is too well known, we do not listen anymore. Yeah, and maybe all my work is about the too well known. Yeah, about all we do not give an effort to listen to. We hear, we hear a major or minor chord, but we don't listen to it. Yeah, or as you maybe know from my other works, I did two big pieces just with signals from our daily life. Yeah. From police sirens, from bells, from all the signs that might lead us to our way, yeah? And we do not never listen to them, but we react, yeah? And what we as musicians might be able to do is that we listen and do not react, yeah? Because of course when you sit in the concert hall and you hear a siren from a police car, you don't run away, yeah? But it's something different happens, and this what happens to our environment, yeah? This is what is interesting for me here, and here of course specified on also a cultural event, as the electric guitar is a cultural event. Maybe some other points that I will show you, yeah. And as you see with the ongoing, and you maybe also heard it, that the situation of the material is then how can you say it? There are processes of isolation, there are processes of maximizations or minimizations, you know. Every maximum is a minimum of something else, so this is our nice dialectic thinking. And then this first study leads to where I started off, and into a maximization. The one maximum is a quite long unisono. The other one is a quite massive running, and the third maximization are these chords, yeah, where also something very physical appears, and this is something which is also interesting, especially with the electric guitar. So you have these massive chords which are tapped, and at the same time, or 1/16 later, you have different positions of the bottleneck. So you have a kind of 2 strikes every 8th notes, yeah? And as you see, possibly with specific pitches which are all according, so that you have 2 ways of these chords, yeah? And how I write the position of the bottleneck here also is related to the chord here, because the position is somehow reproducing the chord on the left hand. So you have 2 ways to listen to that chord, but it's of course very different ways, huh? One thing to the body that was also very interesting, or very for me fascinating always with the electric guitar. We all think that the electric guitar is a full body instrument, yeah? You need your whole body, but you need nothing, you know? You make this and huh? So this is a kind of paradox in the electric guitar, that the body is not involved like the body, for example, as from a tuba player, yeah? Or the body of a percussion player, yeah? But it's extremely physical, and the physicality of course comes from the power of the amps, from the extreme sound also, and the connection of the sound to our body, yeah? Of course the distortion has something to do with our skin, yeah? And also when you play with feedbacks, and I don't have to talk about Jimi Hendrix version of the Star Spangled Banner on Woodstock, yeah? And this is a clear symbolization of what happens to a body, yeah, on the electric guitar, of course. And what Hendrix, and this is maybe the difference between what Hendrix invented, yeah, that he could do this kind of thing as a symbolization of, and let's call it what happened politically and with the Vietnam War, etc. But it was kind of a symbolization, or I wouldn't say a transcription, yeah, because what makes him to a musician is that we can read this into it, but then it was purely music and he worked with it as sounds, yeah. What I do is I'm doing it the other way around, yeah. There is no symbolization because I take my grounding from the symbols, yeah, from the metaphors, but then I try to free them, knowing that there will always be metaphors, yeah. So you will not get rid of the shadow, yeah, never, yeah. And if you want to write a piece for violin, and this is what, for example, the work of Lachenmann always shows us, and he knows this, of course, and composes like this, you will always write for a violin, even when you just make that, as you know from Toccatina, for example, yeah. It's always a violin, and the shadow of Paganini and Bach will always be there, yeah. And what he does is try to reduce the shadow as much as possible, not always in these pieces, yeah. You know, that in one of his greatest pieces in the Contra-Cadenz, he is very aware of the shadow of the orchestra, and he makes a big loop of, I think, 6 times a quasi-romantic orchestra situation, yeah, going down and so he knew this in the 70s, in the very early 70s, in his first piece, and worked it out. What I do is that and this is not my formulation, but it's some musicologist called it, I'm taking my way into the cage of the lion. So I see the lion and I want the lion to be there, and all these kinds of body, and also be having the kind of rock body there in a transformed way, is what I'm searching for, because the transformation of the body is of course clear. And this is the situation. And so we had a first study, with very easygoing opening closing material, and I think maybe I have too little time to go into this situation, or maybe we have time later, but maybe I will give you a little hint about the form. And what the intermezzi do is a very simple thing. They go from one situation, from the first study, to the material of the second study, and this is something that I really rarely do in a quite linear way. I do very seldomly linear processes, because I always fear that when you understand the process, you do not listen anymore. It's like when you go with a train from Köln to Bonn, and you know the process, you might not look anymore because you know where you're on. And as you also know from various composers, it's very hard to make a piece with one single process and to do it in a way that you really listen to each single sound. And one of the pieces that I really admire in this way is Jour contre Jour by Grisset. It starts on the highest C of the piano and ends in the lowest, I think it's a C or an A, I don't remember now. And it's just going down. It does nothing else. But you never perceive it as a process. And something is what I also did. So when you see then the second study, this second study is quite a massive one. So what where the first study ended was a kind of let's say easygoing version, and what you see here is that from the rhythms of the right side, it's all in very easygoing. So this is the punk version, or heavy metal version. Why? There is a kind of physicality in these rhythms, in this kind of wie sagt man, Regelmäßigkeit. What is Regelmäßigkeit? Regularity, thank you. And this is of course a reflection of what happens to these types of regularities that we have in this various and special ways of music. And the intermezzo does nothing else but to transform slowly, the material, the glissando material, in as you see it here, into material which is into regular material, and the chords. So this is what the left hand does, and then you see that we have more and more ways of getting into the regularity, and then ending up here, and then we have the second study, which is the which works out, let's call it more in a more general way, these types of strikes. So we have types of strikes, and also then a type of solos, and let's call it a kind of, I don't want to go in too deep into this kind of way of comparing it to rock music, but at the same time there is a lead and lead guitar and a rhythm guitar. And these are also structures. Maybe I have to say this as well. when I have material like this, of course, something is very necessary for us composers. We have to project this material into time. And one of the biggest problem is how to project material that has a time into a time, and why A is before B, and what does A to B. And for this I make structures. So there are specific structures that derive from also from the inner of the material. When something changes, etc., etc. And so and this is and I call this for me, but this is just my my knitting case, calling it's a gestalt or a melody structure, which are more or less always not too long, so that we can perceive them as specific. There is no English word for Gestalt. It's also the English word for this kind of Gestalten. Maybe I can say something why Gestalt is then so important for me in a little later. And also the structure of how the polyphony works is then referring to the structures where I took my beginning of. And so when I'm referring to some types of music, as for example rock music, I'm then also transforming their inner structure though as a rhythm guitar, a lead guitar, and then of course here is the transformation in the pedals. As you see here in the second one, we have a pitch shifter. This is the whammy pedal, and this is I use it in the most extreme way. It's from normal to 2 octaves down. So the whole thing dives down, 2 octaves comes up, 2 octaves dives down. So we have this massive second way of transforming the whole the whole pitch system. And then of course pitch is not something that is just pitch, but it's also sound, that's also body, that's if you fall down, your body has this kind of, if I make this, you all do this with me, if you fall down, because you to understand it, we are always mimeticizing. We do so this is clear. Understanding means that we all mimeticize what we see, what we hear. If and you know this, if I'm talking to you now, your larynx is always, and your little muscles is doing what I do. You're following me. This is the help for our brain to perceive our world. And if we hear something going up, it was nice now because somebody also had at the same moment the eyes going open. We do this. This is necessary, and so this is what you then. This is the physical aspect as well, besides the whole rhythmic aspect, that you dive down and it goes up, etc., etc. And to the structure again. This is clear. The second pedal here, and I'm also a little nice to the musician, that has not so much to do. It's just a little changing the sound from a very screaming to a little bit less screamy sound. From so it's screamy, bright, sharp distortion. It's a maximization of what is before in the second study. And then maybe something. What is the time? Oh yeah, a second thing at the end. You heard that it's gonna gets crazy. From the second intermezzo goes then gradually, and here for example you see, and if you analyze them, these are just very easygoing blues, etc. scales. And you see that the material is progressively going from this kind of extreme, also running and chords system more and more, and it reduces to the third study, which is then and then we have this situation here, which is a kind of pedal cadenza. This is the situation that I give free to the guitar player, and there is no strings playing. This is all what I call the system sound. So this is the sound of the system, of the whole electronic system. He is free to play with his pedals, to maybe also do some. There are so the pedal cadenza. He can do some slight rotations when he comes back to the next to the next intermezzo. No, to the next study. Yeah. So, and was a very important thing for me, that when I'm doing a counterpoint between a guitar and the electronics, of course, there has to be a situation where the electronics have to sound as they sound. Yeah. And of course, I have no really control over what might sound here, because as you know, electric guitar players are nerds on their equipment. Yeah? And if somebody uses a Fender or a different one, or which kind of, if he uses analog distortions or an analog ring modulator or a digital ring modulator, it all sounds differently, and it also reacts differently. Yeah? And this is something which I like, yeah, and this is something I think totally necessary, that we also give things free, because we also have to be sure that we are not controlling everything. Yeah, and loose control is something also very, I think, necessary in our perceptive and in our understanding system. Yeah, beauty, something, yeah, has also something to do for me with losing control or or not understanding in the way of it. I somehow my body and my system understands, but there is no way of I have no control over this kind of understanding. Yeah? And this is something that for the electronic part is then worked out here. And as you heard it in the version that Jaron did for the CD, he made a quite long cadenza, and he decided that the second cadenza, because there is a second one as well, yeah, is much shorter, because this was his version of being into the piece that he took this cadenza much longer as the second one. Yeah. His decision. I didn't say anything about it, and he also decided what he played with his setup, etc., etc. Yeah? And what he also did, and this is what I really liked a lot, that he even reduced the setup to something like quasi nothing, yeah, which is not easy, because the original that he made was on for a LP, yeah, and as you know, LPs have to be pressed very, very good if the maximums of the amplitudes are from, I don't know what it is, 40 dB to whatever, yeah. So, but I wanted to point out this situation as well. The next study, yeah, is a kind of, let's call it a melodic study, yeah, where the same elements as we had before, yeah, are pointed out, but in a much more, let's say, melodic way. Something that you see that I'm doing very easy or very simple things, yeah, going from single notes to open intervals, to less open intervals, to triads, and then to a chord, yeah, so that it's kind of a filling up the sound, and then reducing the chord as well again into the unison. Yeah, so everything which is written here might look a little, is it strange? But somehow from the thinking how the melody goes, or the structure of the melody, yeah, from little notes to the chords, yeah, and then going back here, and you see very simply that I'm having just different types of how things are then brought to each other, as single taps, as glissando, and then we have a kind of tap plus, and the glissando is reduced into a bending. So that's very easy. Doing this, you know, I call it a little bit for easy. It's not easy, but it's, I don't know. For me, it's clear. Yeah, I call it, and I'm sorry to say this because I found this word for me much before the pandemia, a viral infection. Yeah, that one element, yeah, infects the other. Yeah, and thus is, and so it's everything can be continued to be written, but it's not due to the pandemia here. Yeah. And as you see here as well, maybe I have to describe it. There are here situations which do the same as we did it here. We go from the from three strings to the strings below, and then to all the here. It affects all the strings, and then we go from the middle strings to all the strings. We go from the lower strings. So I'm also very in a melodic way. I'm changing which strings are affected, and you will then see here that we start here. This is not affected, and this is also not affected, so we have a quite clear chord. This is how this, let's say, softer and more nicer, or I don't know what it is. Yeah, so it's a kind of an adagio, because also the sound and the diversity of the sound should be produced or should be brought into one study. And just to go through it very quickly, then you see there is the quasi senza tempo here. Yeah, this is the second way of having a cadenza, and then you see that everything is just to this kind of trembling. So I also, when the body in one time is a kind of a striking body, yeah, and freaking out, we also have the contrary, where the body is you might have the metaphor of being gefesselt, but tight, yeah, and you are just trembling a little bit, and this is the situation which might be the some kind of the opposite of the body of the player, as well as of the conception of sound as an embodied perception. Yeah? And then here, and you heard it, these are very clear situations going into melodic writing. And then just to end this up, the next here would be the pedal cadenza number 2. Jaron decided that this should be quite short, because he decided that he somehow made the first, so the third and the second cadenza into two aisles in the piece, and he felt it's from the form it's better to go faster onwards and not having a big aisle anymore, but this is up to the player. And then you see that it's a progression into again a kind of physicality. From the form you see that the intermezzo that was before dealing with the scales, with the blues and jazz scales, we also have it here again to this kinds of running, so that the material is kind of inverted. So we have, as you know, this kind of not really how are they called? Spiegelungen, inversions. It's not a real inversion, but it's some kind of inversion. As we also know it, for example, from Alban Berg's Kammerconcerto, where you will not hear the inversion, but the inversion somehow is a constructive inversion with by dealing with the materials. And here we have one of the situations again with the chords. All these are the quite let's say understandable jazz chords, with all the situations on the it's the mirroring of them. And here we have the opposite, chord plus transformation, opening, and every time when it's open we hear the chord below, so that we have this kind of as if it were two instruments. So this is also maybe something when the counterpoint is coming to either a kind of synthesia sound, or, and this was very important for me also, that then I give also the imagination of having two really different instruments, so that maybe as if we are divided into Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. Now is it differently, Dr. Hyde and Mr. Jekyll? No, I don't know. You know these two. You know, I don't. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I don't know who is Mr. Hyde and who is Dr. Jekyll, but this kind of breaking up the instrument into two, yeah, is also then really important for me. As you see here, there is no electronics written, yeah, because I give it from the first cadenza. Then, as you see it here, yeah, it's off then, yeah. And it's also off because he then has to find his new version of the next sound, yeah, and we just have the grounding sound of the electric guitar. The sound which I did not write, but it's a sound that Jaron found, or he thought that's the grounding sound of an electric guitar. So from the sound wise, this is also something that I get off control, yeah, because that's the sound of the guitar player, yeah, and of his guitar and of his equipment that he or she chooses, which I think is also kind of an important thing if you work together with musicians. Yeah, there is a part of where is the sound. If you are writing for Ann-Sophie Mutter, you have to deal with her sound. Yeah, she has a different sound than Erwin Arditi. Yeah, and that's clear. Yeah, and of course it's easier or it's more effective also to do it with an electric guitar piece, because then the sound is then really Jaron's sound. The fourth one is then, as you see, a maximization of quite a lot of materials, the running materials, the chord materials, and as maybe you see it here, yeah, this is the big, I don't know, emphatic rock thing, yeah, chords, yeah, and then, yeah. So as you see, what I said before, I'm maximizing, I'm minimizing. Maximization and minimization also always with the eye that maybe I can transgress the instrument by maximizing something, yeah. But of course, I will never put the instrument away, or I will never overcome the instrument, because, as you know, the instrument is always stronger as us, yeah. It will always be an electric guitar. The only thing is that I can make it to somehow my electric guitar, yeah. And these are structural and compositional tools that I'm trying to overcome also this kind of electric guitar as we know it, yeah. I rewrite the electric guitar in order to make it specific, so that you listen to the electric guitar and not just hear an electric guitar, yeah? And this is something what is important by me. And the very end of the piece I want to show you for the end of the whole thing, yeah. This is the situation, yeah, when the material here and here, yeah, they are the same material, so 16th notes, yeah. The left hand is simply going in barrés, yeah. So from the first 3 strings to the next, blah 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 blah, and the bottleneck is doing the opposite, yeah. So they are doing the same material. So I copy in a let's say in a large way the materials into the two hands, and they are doing the same in this situation. And then I'm going into something more or less so that we hear a chord and its transformation, and then strokes on strings ad libitum, so that one is holding a chord and strikes, the other is holding a chord and strikes, yeah, and then the rest of the piece. And that's how I found my end, because somehow, you know, in non-tonal music, how to end, yeah, you have to somehow either it just ends, or to find a situation where it cannot continue, yeah. And what I did is very simple. This goes up into onto the 24th fret, and this goes down onto the and when the two hands are striking each other, it's just it's over, yeah. And as far as I think, it's over. Yeah. And it's over now. Thank you.